Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Liberal White Dudes. I am Andrew,
I'm Jared.
I'm AJ.
and we are Liberal White Dudes. Tonight's episode is titled Trans Folks. You know, trans folks, the folks in the trans community. We'll be chatting about that. But first, a little bit of quick news. Biden ordered some strikes in Syria. So, you know, going back to sort of the firing missiles and killing people in distant lands from a distance.
Same old.
Yep.
Same old.
Did a lot of that under the Obama administration. So he was the, vice president to sit in the, situation room and watch people get killed from a distance. So I guess we're still doing that.
Yep.
I still think, yeah.
The minimum wage, $15 an hour by 2015 thing. Looks like that's going to get pulled out of the COVID bill entirely.
It's going to omit that, I guess.
You mean 2025?
Yeah, sorry. 2025. Yeah.
By 2015.
By 2015, they're going to go back in time. Gotta get
reinstate
back
it.
in time.
That would be good for us. Let's do that actually. Let's figure out the time travel situation. Go back, fix some stuff.
I mean,
actually,
$15
going back to
an hour.
2015 would be a perfect time to fix a few major things. That'd be right on time to fix some things. Just throwing that out there.
Just a couple of things that went wrong.
Couple quick
from there forward.
Quick things.
Probably
could intervene, I guess is what I'm saying. In that particular year.
Oh man, can you imagine the knowledge of foresight on that, and then just being just helpless to stop it?
That would be some kind of hell, honestly.
Yeah, Michael Moore kind of
I feel like
hell.
my hell will be coming back being reincarnated, but in the year 2015. And being even more angry about what's about to happen. Like, that will be a hell for me. I hope that doesn't happen.
That would be horrendous. But yeah, so I guess the minimum wage thing is going to be a separate push. In other news, Costco announced they're raising all of their minimum to $16 an hour. So they're,
good for them.
Amazon's at 15, Target's at 15, Walmart is at 13, something like that.
Not surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what can we expect in a system where there's no incentive to do that?
Yeah.
There's no. I mean, other than altruism.
Well, and getting better workers. I mean, that's the idea anyway.
Yeah.
But you want a better worker at your Costco than you have at your McDonald's, presumably. Especially the McDonald's here in town. Man, that place is terrible.
Man, oh man, is it ever.
From management on down. Nothing against McDonald's as a corporation or in general.
No.
And they do
but
not
you can't go to the
sponsor
one
this
in our
show.
town. And since we're shitting on some other Biden stuff, first migrant facility for children opens under Biden.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of nice. Ribbon
great.
cutting
I
for
mean,
that.
the fact that he served as VP under the Reporter in Chief. I'm not surprised by this sort of thing. I mean, obviously it sucks and it's terrible, and I wish he didn't. But at the same time, I'm not surprised. It's about what I expect from this camp, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have that whole thing figured out yet.
Right.
To a way that isn't a serious human rights violation.
Yeah.
Right.
Apparently.
Right. It's hard for me to see because I don't have all the details. Obviously, none of us do. So it's hard to see what the other evil would be and how this is somehow the lesser of them. I can only assume that's the goal here, is that this is a situation that they haven't gotten under control, obviously, and this is the lesser of whatever other evils are on the list. But like you said, no matter how you slice it, it ends up being human rights violations. So it's never a win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. And, it's not like the policies that were put forth and put in place over the last 4 years suddenly go away magically January 20th of this year. But and any ship that's being steered in the government is a slow-moving, slow-turning, ship. But, I mean, some should take precedent over others, obviously. And
it seems like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of those that needs to get figured out in the short term. Along with the pandemic and the economic distress and,
Get to work, Joe.
The ever-growing list. The ever-growing list of things for Joe Biden to try and do.
Yeah, because it only takes 4 years to turn a prosperous nation into a shithole country.
Right.
Just under the wrong sort of leadership. I hate to use the word leadership here, but
yeah, very loosely.
Yeah,
loose term for this, but yeah.
All right, so yeah, that's the recent news. A lot of news this week about trans folks, the transgender community, partly due to the Equality Act being that passed through the House today, basically telling people that they can't discriminate based on sex or gender identity. Silly me, I already thought that was a thing.
Oh no, I knew that wasn't already a thing. It's one of those things that's like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad we did it finally.
It's not done. It's
I know, but it passed through the House at least. We're making steps at least. I don't know.
One of the things that came to light, a couple of Congress members flew trans rights flags outside of their office, including Marie Newman, Illinois Democrat, whose office happens to be also outside of Green Margarine's office.
Yeah, I was saying Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Probably catch some guff for that, I'm sure.
Known lovingly as Green Margarine on this program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she decided to post a sign on the wall that said, "There's only two genders, women and men," and then something about science.
There you go. The science.
Trust the science.
First of all, we could go all day unpacking how the science is clear and conclusive that sex is non-binary and that transgender people are real people. That would do no good, obviously, for someone like Green Margarine. Yeah. But the bottom line is she's wrong in every way. I'm a little more impressed with her gross, hypothetical, hairy balls to hang hate speech against trans folks in the hallways of her workplace.
And again, fireable offense anywhere else, anywhere in the private sector. You wouldn't work there anymore.
My God, no. It's not even a question.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. You can't say shit like that, dude. It's 2021. Who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And if the trans rights flag is an affront to you, there's something wrong with you.
Agreed. 100%.
That's just an issue with you.
That's an issue with you. If
passing
gay rights flags,
passing an equality bill is a problem to you.
Yeah, or Black Lives Matter flags,
that's an issue with you,
or POW flags, or there's a lot of different flags, right? Which if you have a problem with them, there's a problem with you. Now, Confederate flags, Nazi flags, for some reason, the "Don't Tread on Me" flag.
Unfortunately,
if you
it didn't have to be that way.
About history,
it didn't have to be this way.
No.
But as
again, another example of great patriotic symbols that were hijacked by far right fascists.
I think you got it. I think you got it.
Far white is also accurate.
Yes. They're both true. Yeah, obviously.
You got it both times. Yeah, I mean, flags that basically just say equal rights for a marginalized portion of the population shouldn't be offensive to you.
Right.
And if they are,
this is day one shit, man.
I mean, there was a whole thing on, I don't know if you guys caught the Oreos tweet, but Oreos tweeted trans people exist. That was their tweet, right? That was it. That was the whole tweet. And there was a lot of backlash on that response. I was just like, geez, I mean, that's not even like an opinionated statement. That's just like a factual statement. Trans people exist. They do. We know. I mean, I know them. Yeah. I know a couple. Like they exist. Evidently,
it's such a low bar.
Yeah,
it's not even we support rights for trans people. It's not even we think you shouldn't discriminate against trans people. It's that they exist.
I was like, oh, yeah.
You say God exists with like zero evidence, and I say trans people exist, and I've met them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems like there's
one of those. You go, what?
Trust the science.
I've never
trust the science.
Seen Bigfoot or Loch Ness monster. I have personally come in contact with trans people, so saying they exist
Right.
should not in any way be
controversial, even remotely.
No.
Yeah.
Or like political, even. It's just like
using. Good.
It's just a demographic of people. Like, you know,
right.
I'm like,
at the end of the day,
people from Haiti exist.
Right.
Is that they do? Like, I don't know.
I mean, Ted Cruz exists.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we all know it.
I wish he didn't.
You know, no one's denying it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm happy about it. I'm just saying it's a fact.
And I would say probably when most people tweet that, it's not from a positive place. Like Oreo saying trans people exist, it does seem like it's from a positive place. It's basically just saying, inherently, I see you, you know, identify you. I know you're there. Again, very low bar as far as support goes.
Well, it's just the tired example of them using this phony science just to justify transphobia. It's like, this is so tired. It's been debunked essentially at this point. Just read. I mean, I hate to say this because I know people throw it around a lot, but I literally mean it when I say read a fucking book. Like, it's been debunked. Like, that's so stupid. Using this like phony faux science, like science backs that claim up, which it doesn't.
No,
it's so ridiculous.
Vaccines
to even
don't
hang something like that.
It's one of the, I think one of the
right.
I think one of the linchpin issues I think with this whole debate is I think that the people that are on the transphobic side, they fundamentally misunderstand where it comes from, right? They don't see the distinction between sex and gender as a thing. They don't think that exists. Right. They think that the gendered expression of someone is inherently gifted to them because of their balls or whatever. And that's just not true.
Right.
It's just not. It's just not how that works. Just because I have certain genitals and other people have other certain genitals, it does not make them inherently express in some way. That's a societally constructed thing. There's a reason we use the term societal construct for that, but it is, you know, the roles that men are put in and the roles that women are put in traditionally or non-traditionally are societally constructed. They just are. So the way that you express yourself in a gendered society is subjective based on that structure in the system, right? There isn't any. The biological factor there is entirely irrelevant.
It has become entirely irrelevant.
Sure.
I mean, in the history of man, it was extremely relevant that biological males were stronger than biological females.
Well, there have been instances of a third gender expressions in societies, even in Native American societies. Like the spectrum on this isn't as bimodal as people seem to think it is, I guess. Or what's the word I'm looking for? Two things that are separate. Like a dichotomy, I guess, because it is bimodal. There's a distribution. There's a distribution of expression generally, just in, you know, how people are, what people determine to be, you know, more like masculine and feminine, or male presenting and female presenting, has been different across different spectrums, and your genitalia hasn't always mattered in that. One of the examples of that is like two-spiritedness in Native American traditions. It's like someone who basically takes the role of both genders, and they have sort of that sort of societal, and they're referred to as a third separate thing. They're not men or women, they're two-spirit. Like, that's their whole, like, so, you know, there even is a historical context to my stance on this, right? I don't know. It's interesting to me because I think the distinction that comes from, like, right, I think the thing that people miss is that there's not a set way to be a man, you know? And I think that there are a lot of people that feel like there is, or a set way to be like a woman. Like, that's not, we have societally determined things.
Yeah, but there are things that people value about their identity that they inexplicably tie to their genitals. You know, we've talked about before being a dude as a personality, not as just what you identify as, right? Where it's like that's your whole personality. You know, you go to the bar, you drink beer, you talk about football, you degrade women, you are a dude. That's your whole personality. Just being a guy that's it. Like, there's no depth to that. There's no gray area. And when someone else comes along and says, hey, I'm also a guy, and you look at them and you're like, but we couldn't sword fight with our penises.
It's a strange place to take it.
You don't have one. then like that makes them feel uncomfortable and weird because like how can you have my identity when my whole identity is tied up in my genitals?
Yeah, because to me, I mean,
good point.
Drinking beer and watching football games is the whole bag, I mean, I can do that with anybody. Like, I don't, like, I don't need you to have a penis to enjoy football and beer with you. Like, that's basically
what a hippie way to look at it.
I know it's a very Libby take on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Not
I mean,
requiring
those types
a
of
penis.
social constructs, I think, are those types of social constructs are just such a flat idea at this point. I mean, it's almost not even worth engaging with someone like that at this point. I mean, it's so archaic in a way to even view it that way. If I had to, ended up in a dialogue with someone that really saw it that way, that was just so short-sighted, where, yeah, like you said, like the genitalia literally was a defining component in their,
they are.
And who they are, and they're seem to be so tied up in that, much like Marjorie Taylor Greene and her horrible transphobic hate speech that she posted in her office for all to see. Anybody that shares those views, I mean, again, it's so short-sighted and so outdated that it's. I mean, what are you going to go with that with someone who starts there?
I was just looking up the average age of senators to that point, which is 62.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, they are outdated and outmoded. I mean,
it's a good point.
You look at the Senate, average age is 62.
Yeah. Trust the science there, obviously,
So, bringing societal constructs from when, they were kids.
Coming up, when they were brought up.
I mean,
in horribly racist households.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're talking about being, a kid in the 50s and 60s, right?
Yeah. In a suburb of Illinois.
Yeah.
You're just
before MLK.
Yeah.
Pre any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just anything good in the world that has made progress.
I mean, the idea that those people are not set in their ways or wouldn't have trouble wrapping their mind around new modern definitions of gender identity. Right. And they don't want to. I mean, that's part of it too. It's not just ignorance, but they have no interest in learning it.
And I think it's why we celebrate folks like, I think it's why the community celebrates folks like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
There are times where people are like, why is it such a big deal?
Yeah.
He's not like a hero just for being human. It's like, okay, but when you look at his demographic, that's actually really, really encouraging to see. That's the sad thing. That problem is that we have to highlight that you have these diamonds in the rough. It's like, wait, you're in your mid to late 60s, you're a white male, and you actually understand that trans rights are human rights. Like, you understand that, you get that, like, that makes sense to you. That's weird. Because most dudes like you don't.
Yeah, don't. Yeah.
That's why we have to celebrate it so much.
I think there's one of the big things to me
that
was
a pat
always
on the back for us as well?
linchpin in this conversation too.
We can jump in on that. We're not 62.
I mean, not really. I mean, my demographic. My demographic is my demographic's already pretty checked out on this whole thing. But one of the questions that sort of solidifies this whole conversation to me anyway is it's like, okay, what makes you male, right? I would say my genitals, that's a male. That's how we identify that. What makes me a man, though, is a separate thing. Like, that's a more sort of societally based, or even
it's how many ladies you're currently having sex with.
Well, also, it's for some people, a simple understanding that it's sometimes also just a simple understanding of the difference between sex and gender, though, too. It's just be like, identify as male. It's like, great. Now, if your sex assigned at birth is male because you have a penis, that's not necessarily how you present or how you feel or who you really are or who you become. That's the whole point, is that it's a fluid thing in that way. So it's like to tie it, I'm not one of these people that necessarily, I guess I can see, like you said, where old folks are coming from, where it's like, this is maybe something you never came up understanding or hearing or being exposed to. And we get that that's challenging and scary, but ultimately, again, refusing to see the side of it, the correct side of it, in my view, is just I can't wrap my head around it, honestly.
I even grew up in a time when you didn't talk about being gay. I mean, I didn't know that gay people were even a thing until middle school. I didn't find out that I knew gay people until high school. So, you know, you know,
different time.
Yeah. There's some culture shock there. Yeah. And the thing is it's not like I inherently demonize folks who don't understand things, I guess. You know,
right. I don't want to be like, insensitive to that. It's like, a real thing. Like,
yeah, being ignorant is a real thing, you know. But I think that also then being ignorant and then being willfully ignorant, that's an issue, and you suck. And we should work on moving you towards, you know, thinking about what the psychological analysis has been and what the scientific analysis has been and where those consensuses lie. Because if you care about any of those things, or like about people in general, we've got some reading to do, you know. Got some back and forth to have. I know they don't. They should though. Is my hot take. Care about people.
They feel like it takes something away from them and their identity for you to identify as something that they hold dear to being themselves.
Yeah, I think they just fundamentally like misunderstand the connection there. I think that's what it is. I think that if your whole identity is hinged in the fact that you're a dude, you got some growing to do, Holmes.
Yeah, they're not going
you should find some depth.
That's the whole,
I know,
that's
but you should.
Thing,
is what I'm saying.
Is most folks are, you know, immovable
like
objects,
you mentioned,
right? They don't grow.
Yeah, the willful ignorance, Jared. Like you said, like I was saying, it's like, especially putting something like that on the sign, like trust the science. It's like, okay, are you actually willing to listen to science? I doubt that you are. No. The willful ignorance is what it is, really, and so that's why it's almost like more disrespectful. It's one thing just to put your hate speech up there, but then to tagline it with, quote, trust the science. I don't get whether there's quotations around that either. Like, did someone say that or is she just an idiot? I'm guessing it's the latter. But either way, it's like, you can trust the science, but you don't. That's the problem.
That's like the whole thing.
That's kind of the issue, actually.
Yeah.
Do you know what maybe it is? You know what maybe her trust the science thing is a jab at people that say that. Like she just is anti-science, and that's the whole.
That's the idea. It's supposed to be throwing it back in the face of leftists because leftists are always talking about science like it's some sort of, you know, immutable fact, because they don't understand science either. They don't care to.
I know, you're so right.
They don't understand science, and because they didn't do well in science in school, you know, and then they're just like, well. You always saying this science thing. I don't understand it, but there's only like penises and vaginas, so at least I understand that. I can wrap my mind around that. That's all I'm familiar with, and we have names for those things. If you have this one, you're this, and if you have this one, you're this, and I get that.
Yeah. One of the things that I will put out there is that gender expression is not binary; it's bimodal. That's the general consensus on this, right? It's not one or the other. It's a sort of gradient with two peaks, right? There are two peaks in sort of the male and female, sort of like what our stock standard in our head is, right? But then there's a gradient. There's a distribution of in betweens and even like farther off the edges of what we expect, right? And I think that the gray area there should be sort of recognized, I guess, because like,
well, I mean, you're talking. I think too. I mean, there's genetics, neurobiology, endocrinology. Like these are all factors that, again, aren't taken into account when you're the type of person that goes, well, there's a penis, so they're male, and I don't care what they say the rest of their fucking life. It's like that.
Cock pussy, man, you decide.
Short, yeah, right. Most
exactly.
I just to this ever apparently.
Yeah, if I may for a minute, not to dive into tangential issues, but the one of the things I've noticed really recently, and for the past couple of years anyway, out of the sort of conservative end of talking points, is that it's all culture war stuff. Has been since, like, you know, we were talking about gay marriage, and for some reason they seem to think that winning these cultural landmark fights or whatever that they're on the wrong side of will for some reason follow with the policies they want. Like they've given up on economic policy for social policy because they think the social policy will inevitably lead to what they want economically. And it's like, why don't you just focus on the stuff that?
Well, appealing to one issue voters keeps them in power. That's what Trump ran on. You appeal to one issue voters, and that's how you stay in power. You know, I read an article today, not to get totally off topic, but you know, where now, you know, the Capitol riot's done, everything's kind of getting back to normal. Trump's going to talk at CPAC, and it's just like everyone's just like kind of still behind him. Most GOP voters still think there was election fraud. They don't care that he's going to spout that again.
80% of Republicans,
they don't give a shit.
Think the election was stolen.
Yeah, they still
80%.
do. And yeah. And Republicans like Liz Cheney, they're dinosaurs. They're a dying breed. They're so few and far between. So many would rather just glide Trump's coattails through this fucking shit show and remain in power on the strength of these single issue voters, rather than admitting that this is all fucking bullshit. So I mean, it ties into that as far as when you're talking about people that you know vote against their own interest because they're single issue voters. And, you know, trans rights, that's a single issue for a lot of people. Just like abortion.
Yeah,
it falls
this
in those
was
categories.
A real conversation, and it's one of the points that I wanted to hit tonight is said to somebody, do you feel like he incited the insurrection? And they said, well, am I going to vote for the guy who wants dudes in the bathroom with my daughter?
Right. Yeah. Which again,
hits for those people. It just hits for those people, and it's so wrong on so many levels. First off, first and foremost, pedophilia and transgenderism don't go hand in hand. Second,
they certainly don't.
Pedophiles can already be in the bathroom with your daughter without being transgender. Like what? I don't know what the percent. I mean, there's a very small percentage of the population already is transgender. This is a very small subset of folks.
Mm-hmm. I'll Google that real quick.
And then what's the percentage of transgender pedophiles? Like there might be one guy like Gary. Yeah. We all know who he is because he's the transgender pedophile. So what a weird thing to even to be on your radar. Second off, that's not where most of those types of things happen. It's not in the bathroom. Who cares what genitals are in the bathroom?
It's usually a family member, you piece of shit. Do some research.
It really is.
Your
and
also, brother.
Usually your uncle. Camp, folks. Jesus usually Christ. Your camp.
Yes. Almost exclusively Republicans.
Almost exclusively your camp. Yeah.
Yep. That's also true. Those are numbers. You can look
those are numbers. Up. Look them up. Yeah.
Trust the science.
Yeah, trust the science.
For God's sake.
But those talking points hit for whatever reason. There are people in this country who are scared of transgender people walking into the bathroom with them.
Yeah. Well, they target it the same way they target single issue voters for abortion. Same way. They're murdering babies. Simple as that. Here's all this science that says they're not. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They are murdering babies. That's all you say. That's your ad. You're
and
done.
God hates abortion.
It's
like actually it's not mentioned in the Bible at all.
No. Well, actually, if anything, God killed a lot of babies. About
so many times he killed
so many babies.
Killed so many babies.
You would think he was like and adults. He kills a lot of folks.
Yeah,
kills a lot of folks.
If you're gonna be honest,
I would say if you're gonna trust the numbers, in the Bible, no one's killed more folks. Anyways, like no single person has killed more folks.
The body count in just the Great Flood.
Right, the body count alone in Sodom and Gomorrah. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I'm just not talking even about COVID. He's partially responsible there, right?
You've seen the Al Green clip, I'm sure, of him going to bat in Congress about this whole transgenderism thing. And one of the things he said is that religion was what you guys used to put, black people down. Yeah. It just has always been, and this is the thing that I think people miss. I think this is the thing that people miss really consistently, especially from the Christian side of this, is that while people preach, the love of Jesus Christ, the church historically has been on the wrong side of every civil justice issue ever.
Yeah. I mean, the Crusades were a thing.
The Crusades were a thing. I mean,
that was go out and murder you because you're not a Christian.
Yeah,
it doesn't really say that in the Bible.
Yeah, AOC had a great quote before Congress recently that still resonates with me, and she's a religious woman. She considers herself, I believe, Catholic or Christian, maybe Catholic. But she said something, I think, in Congress where she says, the only time freedom of religion is ever invoked in this chamber is to strip rights away from someone. That's the only time they ever come up. They never come up for any other reason except for when you're looking to strip basic human rights away from a group. Then they come up. And she's like, that's fucking appalling to me. She didn't say fucking, I added that. But she's like, that's appalling. As a self-described woman of faith, she's like, that's appalling that the only time you guys ever bring it up is when you're actually showing how much you hate a group of people. Doesn't that bother anybody else?
Yeah.
That goes to church on Sunday?
It seems like it should be. I feel like, again, there's a cognitive dissonance there. If your side of the aisle has historically been on the wrong side of every civil rights issue ever, you should probably reconsider what you support.
Agreed.
The church was, the church was pro-slavery. The church was anti-gays. Like, it has been forever. And I know that the thing is that
they're not on the fence.
I'm hoping to appeal to the folks that are.
True.
But here's the thing: is because I know that there are people that are religious that are like non-secularly religious, right? Or that are like religious and then still vote on these single issue things that aren't necessarily aware of those other things, right? I'm trying, like, and not that I'm hitting that audience, but I just feel like it has to be said, right? Because I know you're out there. I'll appeal to you, okay? You right there. I know you're out there. Please.
Doesn't have his moment with him.
Yeah, right. Pay attention to where your side has been historically, for God's sake.
I wish someone would. Yeah, I wish they would. But I think it's like Andrew said. They know. They just don't care.
Yeah, they don't. They know they're on the side of white supremacy. They know they're on the side of keeping women down. They know they're on the side of keeping African Americans down. That's the side that they want to be on. They choose that side every time at the voting booth. And then they'll hide behind religious reasons because that is an unarguable thing. Nobody will argue with you about your religious faith, even if your religious faith is white supremacy and patriarchy and homophobia. Yeah.
Well, because every religious argument ultimately leads to the final conclusion, which is like, okay, well, could God please stand up and clarify for us? Oh, he can't. Oh, but you still believe he's a thing. All right, well, this conversation is now over.
Yeah. Can he clarify for us these words, which are so hard to clarify for ourselves, like, turn the other cheek or love your fellow man, or, can somebody please give me the nuance here? Am I really supposed to love people that I'm uncomfortable with?
Yeah,
because they don't look like me.
There's like a
Jesus' subtle message of love.
it's interwoven in there. If you look between the lines,
you
can occasionally
read between the lines, you'll see it.
In Jeremiah, love people who look like you and sound like you and make you comfortable. Everybody else,
everybody else, throw them to the curb, whatever.
Fuck them. It says that.
Yeah, I forget the chapter and verse, but it's definitely in Jeremiah.
Bibleations 12:12.
Yeah. Why not?
A couple more things I want to hit tonight. One, Rand Paul questioning Dr. Rachel Levine, who is up for the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, first transgender person to be put up a nomination from a Senate-confirmed position. And basically, he makes an ass of himself, saying just horrible and hateful things based on the candidate being transgender, having nothing to do with her qualifications, because those are not in question
relevant to him at all. Yeah,
they're not in question. Pediatrician, various posts administratively in hospitals and whatnot. That part of it, as far as the knowledge base to do the job. But he basically likened. I don't know what the PC term for sex change operations is anymore. Anybody?
Sex change operations is fine. I mean, that works. Sexual transition
Yeah, something else.
Transition.
Transitional surgery.
Anyway, he likened it to genital mutilation.
Christ on the cross.
Yeah, I mean, just said all kinds of just ignorant, stupid stuff. And wanted to get to the nuance of whether or not She supported the government intervening between parents and children as far as what the child wanted, and that kind of thing. And it's just like, again, this type of issue affects such a small portion of the population, and ultimately, you don't get to make any of your medical decisions as a kid, right?
Right.
We've already decided that. That's already a thing.
Yeah, it's just true.
Now,
yeah.
this particular issue is a little more nuanced than that, and it's a gray area. And honestly, it does need more, research and help. Basically, money. You want to fund that, Rand Paul? I feel like not.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, Rand Paul.
You know
this
what?
Is a call to Rand
we should
Paul.
fund that. I agree with you.
LWD call to Rand Paul. Go ahead and fund that.
You can't get tattoos till you're 18. I mean, there's a lot of things that we take out of the hands of kids just because you're not, a person yet. But the whole confirmation. I mean, yeah, you should.
But you're still a person if you're 2 weeks in a womb. You're definitely a person.
Well, yeah. You're a person right up until the point where you're born, and then not a person again until you're 18.
Until you're 18.
For a while. It's kind of weird. You'll get used to it. Like you're definitely a person. You're 100% a fucking person. You got a 401k. You got fucking friends.
Social Security.
So you're a white person.
Yeah, definitely. Those are what they're really concerned about, honestly.
It's true,
in that position.
Actually, I remember the fight for them to not allow an abortion for a underage Mexican immigrant who had been raped on her way to America. They were fighting to stop her from being able to have an abortion.
Because that life mattered for about 8.5 months or so.
I mean, I can't remember my mind around that.
Would never matter again. No.
Because they want her to have the baby and then throw that baby in a cage to be uncomfortable and starve. It's just so weird. It's a weird fetish. I don't get it.
Yeah, right. It's one of the biggest sort of things that butt heads on that ideal is that it's like the Republican Party cares deeply about your unborn child, but they hate your child when it's born.
Do they ever?
Yeah, because it's about the woman carrying the child. It's not about the baby at all. Right. It's just being able to tell women what they're allowed to do.
The hardest thing for me is wrapping my head around them thinking this is what Jesus would want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like literally at every point during that whole process, it would just be like,
Jesus wants this.
Again, I don't know.
God's gonna be so proud of me for that.
Somewhere in there, it's the uterus control verse and chapter.
Yeah, right.
Chapter and
verse.
I'm
sure it's in there.
Jesus loves to control uteruses. You should go forth and do the same.
I guess.
Can I also just for a minute, the whole thing about what we were saying that kids don't make those decisions, right? There is a process, just for those who don't know, in which if parents start to identify sort of gender nonconforming behaviors, they can go see doctors who then you go to sort of a psychoanalyst. They do some sort of they do a lot of therapy, or gender therapy is a specific type of therapy. You talk back and forth and you do a lot of consultation and a lot the whole argument that this 12-year-old is transgender and they're getting transitional surgeries. It's that's not happening. Okay, that's not a thing that happens.
Yeah,
ever.
I mean it's more about whether
respecting
or not
their how they want to present.
And the government will step in for unsupportive parents. Basically, the message that Rand Paul is sending is, don't worry, parents who hate trans people. If your kid comes out as trans, you can still force them to do what you want. You can still stop them from being able to present however they want. You can still go after them as a person for this.
Honestly, I think we should maybe start doing, because how they have school campus advisors that are mental health experts. We have therapists now on campus basically, and, because some parents are horrendous and don't take their kids to therapy if they need it or don't have the money for it, which is also fair. And I think maybe there should be some sort of addition there in terms of
they're also not therapists.
No, I know. I know. I just mean you know what I mean though. There's there are parents, and I've had friends whose parents are like this, who will actively deny any sort of mental health issue as a real problem and shut you down for feeling that way. So
are you talking about my
having
folks?
Beyond School,
yeah, right.
Like
me.
See, exactly.
Suck it up.
Yeah, right. No, having those on campus options is important to a lot of kids, right? I know that it's helped a lot of people that I know, right? So I think that maybe there should be some sort of move there. Not that the Republicans will love that, but
Right.
you know, I think that providing that for kids in that way is a way of circumventing stepping in on behalf of the government in an individual's situation and providing it broad spectrum. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that should be
Certainly,
basic
I mean, as
training
much-
for anybody working
yeah.
in there. LGBT issues.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Obviously,
most
that's
certainly,
like,
yeah.
At a high school, that's like prime time to be. I mean,
Yeah.
not that counselors in
And
my
college.
day would have been any help on that front.
Yeah.
Obviously.
High school and college. That's like the, you know,
Right.
prime time for.
Well, I think that's something that a lot of organizations are working towards. I mean, the more resources and support we can provide, you know, our youth in general, but obviously, you know, a community like trans youth or any, you know, LGBTQ youth face a whole other onslaught of problems when they enter those, you know, high school and stuff. So, yeah, I think as many resources as we could give them would be ideal.
Yeah, I don't know about you know, not to pat myself on my white savior back or anything, but I was one of the founding members of the GSA at my high school, right? And
Nobody knows what that is.
getting Gender Sexuality Alliance. So it's a sort of safe space for people who are questioning their sexuality or their gender or whatever.
Cool.
Yeah,
Really cool.
it was a really cool initiative for us to start, and it's helped a lot of kids at least express themselves, you know, in a safer environment than maybe they have in their home or elsewhere on campus. And we did get some pushback from the, you know, more horrendous individuals on our campus, but still, you know, you persevere through that stuff. And I think that, you know, I suggest to anyone that's watching, if you're interested in activism in that way, clubs for school is an important thing. You know, not everywhere has one. They just don't.
Yeah. When I was in high school, my safe space was theater class.
Yeah,
all we
there you
got.
go. Yeah, exactly.
Kids like me, that's all I had.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't have an alliance. I said other theater kids. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, and so yeah, and it allows for that sort of like social dynamic to be a little bit more comfortable. You know, it gives people a place to be, and one of the things that greatly lowers, you know, like suicidality and depression is having your community to talk to, being able to express yourself when you feel like you're being, you know, impressed upon or any of that. So, you know, anybody that's listening, if you're interested in, you know, starting that up, get on it. It's good. It's a good initiative. Make your, you know,
That's very cool.
let's welcome these folks. You know, it's good stuff.
Last topic for the trans folks episode. Trans folks in sports. This has been kind of a hot button issue, obviously, for, you know, a while now. The argument that, you know, trans women are women, which I don't actually know whether my co-hosts are comfortable saying that or feel that way.
The trans women are women?
Right.
I am.
Oh, yes,
absolutely.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
that, yeah.
For the
Without
purposes
question.
of sport?
Yep,
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
Okay. I'm going to disagree with my co-hosts, and here's why.
God.
The reason that men's and women's sport exist, right, is because it is not a level playing field. If men and women were together in sport, men would make the team and women would not. There is no sport that I'm aware of that is dominated by females where men are not better. Biological men are better at sport than women. Biological women.
Okay.
Is that controversial?
I have a couple of contentions with that, and I'll tell you what they are.
Okay.
Okay. For one, the way that we delineate, this is a thing that actually happened a while back. There was I don't remember if it was the Olympics or some sort of professional organization, but there was a woman who was kicked out because her T levels were too high. A biologically born woman just had too high level T. It was the Olympics, right?
Yeah, but then other also, yeah.
Right.
Other events as well, but the Olympics was the big one.
But the Olympics was the big one, right? Yeah. So if that's our means of determining who gets to play in women's sports is your T levels, then that's not a trans rights issue. That's just an individual testing issue.
Yeah.
If we have some bar for what, you know, T levels are allowed, then that's its own thing. Then it's less discriminatory and more. Then it's interestingly discriminatory in a different way. But you know, if that's our bar, if the T levels are bar, then I think we have to have a conversation about that, and the transgenderism is a non-issue. it just in general, because that even if that demographic of people generally has higher T levels, it matters not at all if we're already testing for T levels in everybody.
It's a performance enhancing drug, so there's already a testosterone test. Now, I actually happen to disagree with the idea that her T levels being too high means she can't participate in sport, because Phelps had something with his lactic acid buildup, right? He
certainly did.
Freak of nature in that he did not get the same result in his muscles when he was swimming as other people would doing the exact same activity, with everything else being the same. And they called him a freak of nature because of that, right? That's just him lucking out in the genetic lottery. That's not, I would say the same for her. If she produces a lot of testosterone for whatever reason, that doesn't make her incapable or not, allowed to participate in women's sport. Actually, I disagreed with that particular ruling.
But then if you're...
It's not about what are all the scientific differences between a biological male and a biological female. I don't think that we know why. I mean, the world records are all held by men.
I mean, they're split. Yeah, gendered. Sure. Yeah.
The world records for any given activity are all held by men. There is no one at the top of their sport in the women's sport that beats the men at the top of their sport. Now, there are women at the top of their women's sport who could absolutely compete with the men, and probably should. I don't know.
And maybe here's my biggest contention with this argument in general is that this argument seems to cascade from a professional level to an amateur level, and I hate that that's a thing. That people feel like trans women who are in high school shouldn't be able to participate in women's high school sports. I think that's just a dumb argument. The reason that we do high school sports is as a hobby program, as a practice program, as a way to teach people what they like and their individual enjoyments, not as much like a record setting, some sort of like
depends on your school.
Deep intense competition. Well,
depends on your school. There are schools that absolutely are exactly that, and they're feeders for professional sport and college sport. Mm-hmm. That is what they are. They are grinder programs for those things. I mean, you didn't go to one of those, but Detroit Country Day, as an example, has produced multiple NBA stars every year because that is what they are. They are a basketball school, specifically. There are a lot of high schools like that across the country because it's huge money.
Do you think that's generally what high schools are like?
Generally, I don't know. Is that relevant to the conversation?
How does it?
Well, it is in the sense that this dialogue has started affecting people that are. This dialogue affects people not just in professional sport. If that makes sense.
Here's what I don't think like trans women shouldn't be allowed to play athletics. I don't think that's true. But I think there's more nuance to it than just saying they play women's sport.
I think there's a lot of determination that has to be done there. I don't think we have any conclusive deciding scientific factor one way or the other. But I do know that this conversation alone affects a lot of people top down. It doesn't just affect whether or not the professional women's league is, who's holding those, whatever. It affects high schoolers. It affects, it affects loads of people that are outside of that bar.
High school biological women. Those are a lot of the people who are standing up and saying, hey, I didn't have the benefit of being born a biological male. I'm having trouble competing with someone who did. And that's why I don't participate in male sport. And now you've come into my female sport and you are beating me at it. What do I do? How do I get back my ability to compete on an equal level with my teammates? And again, I feel like there's got to be, and there's no conversation on the other side of the issue. Nobody hasn't. Well, that's not true. Nobody. Bigots do. I haven't heard any non-bigots who have an issue with trans men participating in men's sport.
Right, of course not.
I haven't heard that argument at all. Why is that?
Sure, but that's because of the way that transition works. I think is different.
Well, because it's way harder for them because they were born biologically female.
Well, no, because given the right set of circumstances from a puberty blocker's perspective, you can be as a biologically born female as trans man can be just as athletically efficient as a man can in the general sense. That's been the consensus anyway.
Yeah.
From the meta-analysis I have in front of me.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of nuance to that. I think there's a lot of gray area. I am pro.
Well, then let's move to the logical conclusion of that though, that stance, right? What are the outcomes given that we have some sort of like trans specific exclusionary segregated league? That's a little weird. I don't feel like that's okay.
I don't think that's
like
great
what's
either.
our options?
For me, the easy, and I don't say easy answer, but the most straightforward answer is biological males compete with biological males and biological females compete with biological females. And yes, you can present as female on the biological male court or field or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, again, this might just be a short answer or super simplified, but something along those lines, almost where it's like, why do we even have gender roles in sports? This is the varsity basketball team. Are you, student, good enough to be on varsity basketball team? Are you a woman? Are you a trans woman that's good enough to be on varsity basketball team? Cool.
But that's
it doesn't
the whole
matter.
Title
This is the
IX
varsity
thing.
I do feel I feel that way about high school sports for sure.
Girls didn't get sports in the first place because they would never be on a varsity basketball team. So you need a girls basketball team if girls want to play basketball.
No, I'm sorry. I'm saying that more along the lines of what you're saying. I'm opening it up and saying, look, you know, you are a trans woman. We respect that. We, you know, acknowledge that. You present as a trans woman. You are a trans woman, but you can play on the men's basketball team or whatever because your physical skill set is on par with that league. You're still a woman. You're still a trans woman.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's where my opinion lies. But you know, again,
and that could be. I mean, I don't know if that's the answer. I just know that, like you said, there's a lot of nuance to it. So
yeah, and I know it wouldn't be comfortable.
I think that exclusionary. Right?
Yeah.
If you make the team, I don't know.
I think that exclusionary politics. I think that exclusionary politics or exclusionary transactions should have underpinnings of like some sort of evidentiary something or other, right? So if we're going to do the research into this, let's do the research into this before we do anything exclusionary. I don't think that we should be making
you're saying it's exclusionary.
Things that
it's
segregational.
not at all.
I don't think we should be making any sort of segregational or what's the word I'm looking for? Discriminatory stances or policies until we have the information in front of us. I just like if we're gonna, you know, if there is an abundant amount of evidence that trans women will dominate every woman's sport from here on out, then I think maybe we should make some moves on that. But that just hasn't been borne out based on this thing I have in front of me, and I have to read through it before.
I'm also curious how often this comes up in general.
That's the thing. That's because it's such a small segment of the population to begin with, trans people, right? And then there's a very small segment of that trans people in sport, but there are already people setting world records as trans women. I know that most of I know that there have been a lot of stories of trans women dominating a field that didn't actually take place. I know that there's been a lot of misinformation campaigns by the right on that, and I don't have specific examples right now, but I do know that that's a thing. Do you still think it's a controversial statement to say that biological males are better at sport than biological females?
I think it's not fair to say that we have conclusive evidence to determine that trans women have an edge over women right now, because we don't. We don't know we don't know if that's like, we don't know what the broad spectrum reality of that is right now. We haven't done the research, and I think that it's poor politics to make policy decisions if we don't have the evidence in front of us yet. That's my stance on it anyway.
All right. Well, we can disagree. I think we do have the evidence, because then, unless you're saying there has to be some sort of bar to consider yourself trans.
How do you mean?
My bar sets at, you tell me you are.
So does mine.
You tell me you're a trans woman, I say you're a trans woman. Doesn't matter if you've had hormone therapy. Doesn't matter if you have,
I agree.
Okay. So from that standpoint, you are, other than saying you are trans, a biological male, yes? And the statistics have proven out that biological males are better at sport than biological females. And I'm not saying every male is better than, I wouldn't beat Serena Williams at tennis. I wouldn't score a point against her.
I guess we're just greatly underestimating the social impact of this sort of policy. I think that's really what it is, because maintaining the integrity of a sport and like maintaining the happiness of most of the population of the transgender population, those two things are incomparable to me. I care about one. I do not as much care about the other at all. And I think that just comes from a difference in philosophy on that. The damage that we do through discriminatory politics matters to me more than the outcomes of the sports that we take part in, I guess.
Right. And again, I feel that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
I'm a sports fan. So
me too.
There are aspects of this that I think are worth examining. I just have to take it's one of those, like, if you're going to put me on the spot and be like, should trans women be allowed to compete in women's sport? Yep. And then if you show me all the evidence why that's bad, I'll be like, okay. So though, because that's where my position has to be at this point for it, because I feel like we don't, like Jared said, we don't really have a lot of data. This isn't a huge portion of the community. And right now, my instinct would always be to stand up for the rights of all women, including trans women.
Between men and women, not because of gender roles. That's not why we have men and women's sport. It has nothing to do with gender identity.
Right.
And it has everything to do with the biological advantages.
And that's why I said I understand what you said. It's a possible suggestion of how you could approach that. That's why I understand that stance. I'm just saying where I stand on it. If it's like you have to give an answer, yes, they should be allowed to compete, or no, the answer is yeah, they should.
Well, yeah, they should.
Until we have a better answer,
compete.
No, okay. Should trans women be allowed to compete in women's sports at this moment? Yes, they should. Until we got a better solution, yep, you bet.
And I think too, if we bar trans women in general all across the board, you're missing a spectrum of people who don't biologically have an advantage, because there are trans women who don't. Right, transitioning before puberty causes you don't have a biological advantage. You develop exactly the same. So we're not. Yes. It is, and I have the meta-analysis here if you want to read over it. It's kind of long, but that's just true.
Published by who? Peer-reviewed by who?
All right. I mean, I can read it to you if you want.
No.
I don't want to stay on for that.
I'll read through a whole meta-analysis right now if this is what we're doing. I will, bar none. But, so I think that putting a trans women bar on women's sports excludes individuals that are perfectly reasonable to be included in the demographic. I think until if we're going to do testosterone testing, there you go. Then it's not a trans issue. It's just a biological hormone production issue. If it's, but just excluding trans women, it's too broad. It's too broad a net. It's too broad a net to cast. We're cutting people out.
Excluding trans women from women's sport.
Yeah.
And calling it something else.
Yeah,
because it's not what it is anymore.
It deters them from competing.
Does it?
It certainly does. At least from the testimony that I have heard and the testimony that I have read, it absolutely does. Yes.
Okay.
Not that. I mean, let's talk. I mean, just for a minute about putting trans women on a boys' sports team. I mean, I don't know how.
Maybe it's just something else.
It's not just the product of the town that I'm from, maybe, but. It's not like that's going to be even remotely healthy.
From wouldn't stand for a trans person walking the street.
Right. So I just there are just means.
We're both from small towns.
There's just means of socially safeguarding those people in a youth environment that I think is important, and more important than the integrity of this random high school basketball game from a biological maybe advantage that this person may have in this particular instance.
Women disagree with you. You say, well,
I say, well, we should probably do some more research on it. We need more numbers. We need more information because we don't have all the information right now.
I mean, because again, this is one of those that affects me not at all, right? Like my day to day or forever affects me not at all. But as I put myself in the shoes of the various people involved, I do tend to side more with the biological female on the girls' team than I do with the biological male on the girls' team.
Sure.
I just think I kind of fall where, yeah, I just think ultimately, even though I'm a big sports fan, I definitely fall more on the side where Jared says, where it's like, if we're going to come down to whose rights are more important, trans rights or athletics, it's like trans rights. Like, I do get that for some high school students, athletics are high stakes. And, you know, like there is nuance to this, and there's more to this discussion. But ultimately, I can't sideline trans rights in the name of athletics. I can't. I couldn't do that. No way. So,
yeah, and I don't see it that way. So I guess we'll have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a trans right to be on a female sports team.
Well, here's the thing: is I think that it's a trans right to be able to participate in the social conventions of your school and in the clubs and in the and everything. I feel like that's your right to do, and I feel like it's your right to do in a safe and comfortable environment.
Yeah,
and that's for everyone.
Where that is a social construction. Well, I agree with you.
I mean, all right, there's some, I suppose, but I think that should be just the lay of the land. I think that teaching trans acceptance and LGBT acceptance in general should be bar none the way that we do that socially top down, and there has been a move towards that over time. So I think that those, you know, even in my town, where it's I know a lot of bigoted folks,
sure,
still should be the rules. Still should be the rules here. You know, and I think that I think we should crack down. Right. That's what I'm saying. So I think that I think that, again, the exclusionary policy there needs to be more evidentiary. And I also, from a youth perspective, even the people that have published, and I'm reading this now and I'm doing it, you know, live, but I'll do it live. You know, even the people that publish the papers about, you know, what the biologic advantage may or may not be, said that it doesn't really apply to youth sports, that those, you know, instances should be excluded from the analysis here. And I think that really is just, I think we shouldn't be including high schools in our, if we want to put rules for professionals and for Olympics, then there's an argument to be had there, and we can talk about that, because that's the highest upper echelons of sporting, right? Whatever. But from a recreational level, people do recreational sports to get into their hobbies, to get into maybe a work field.
Jared, to play devil's advocate for that though, Jared, like I said, a lot of high school athletes, that's the high stakes that they're in.
Professional sport starts at 5 years old or sooner.
Sure, but I don't think that discounts the experience of people who also want to get into that field of working. I don't think it does.
Jared, believe me, I'm on your side on this in a lot of ways, but I'm just saying that you certainly can't just discount the stakes that exist within high school sports. For a lot of kids in our nation, that's their future. It's their way out. It's their ticket out. It's their, you know, and a lot of Olympic athletes are high school age. So for some of those
almost all of them are, because you have to be an amateur.
So what I'm saying, those lanes really intersect a lot more than maybe you think when you're saying it that way. Like, well, I think if
we've decided on from a scientific perspective. That's all I'm saying. My stance on this comes from the thing that I read before this a couple of weeks ago. So that's where I come from on all this.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we don't all agree on all the points here, but
that's why I brought it up.
I mean, I think that there's
naturally.
Yeah.
All right. 5 out of 5 figs for trans folks.
Trans rights.
Probably
trans rights,
1 out of 5
folks.
figs for how they're treated in this country.
1 out of 5 for transphobes.
But 5 out of 5 figs for the passing of the Equality Act through the House today. Let's get through the Senate. As we tweeted previously, we have the House, the Senate, and the White House. How about we do the shit?
Yeah, maybe do your jobs. I don't know why we're so concerned about not doing that.
Like, they had just the Senate and the White House, and they did all kinds of terrible stuff. Let's do some awesome stuff with all the things.
For the short time that we have all three.
It's going to be short. Here live every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. You can subscribe to us here on YouTube, and it'll send you an email when we're live so that you know. And then you can go ahead and go over and like us on Facebook so that when the post-prod version's up, you'll know that as well. And then you can follow us on Twitter, also, again, being notified about the post-prod version, but then also some commentary on the various politics of the day. Thank you, everyone, for showing up.
And it's hilarious.
It is also hilarious. And have a good night.